Well, the Supreme Court has cleared the way for Donald Trump to fire millions of federal workers that they were trying to wipe out with Doge. Now, the Supreme Court overturned a lower court ruling, paving the way for this action to take place. Now, here's what they basically said. Remember, in February, Donald Trump signed an executive order directing agencies to prepare for workforce reductions. Supreme Court says that's likely lawful, thus allowing those layoffs to proceed. However, Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson strongly disagreed. She was the only justice to dissent, criticizing the court's decision as hubristic and senseless. She said it's the wrong decision at the wrong moment, especially given what little this court knows about what is actually happening on the ground. She argued that her colleagues were making judgments from a, quote, lofty perch far from the facts. She also cautioned the court that they lack a real understanding of the current situation on the ground and described this ruling as the wrong decision at the wrong time. Now, keep in mind, Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who often rules along with Jackson, she agreed with the rest of the court, saying that the problem is what's before the court is not the actual plan, saying they have been presented with one. This, though, is devastating news for a number of federal workers, and this could cause more chaos. My panel, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA out of D.C., Dr. Larry J. Walker, associate professor, University of Central Florida out of Orlando, and social justice leader and movement strategist, Talik Muhammad, who joins us as well from D.C. Mustafa, I'll start with you. You've been one of those federal workers working in one of these agencies. And what we know is that a lot of people have been despondent, or unsure. This impacts not only the workers, their husbands, their wives, their partners, their girlfriends, their boyfriends, whatever you want to call them, their children, folks in college. People don't understand what it means when you do mass layoffs like this. You are causing a significant amount of harm up and down the board.
Yeah, you destabilize the economy, which is, something that everybody says that they care about and that they're trying to, to stimulate, because people think, well, it's just folks in Washington, D.C., but there are a large number of federal employees all across our country that help to prop up the economies in mid-size and larger cities, of course, and sometimes in much smaller areas. So you do that. But what's more important also is the fact that you actually are putting us in a situation where the social safety net that is so critically important in this country is being slashed by these sets of actions. There could be service disruptions. There will be service disruptions. Let me be very clear, because I've worked with over 17 federal agencies over the years. So I know the work that they do. I know how important it is. I know the high level that they do it at. So whether we're talking about healthcare or Social Security, Veterans Affairs, a number of different agencies and departments play a critical role in making sure that those services are out there. The other question that folks should be asking in this moment, based upon this Supreme Court decision, is about the power balance or power imbalance, if you will, because Congress traditionally has been the one who makes decisions about restructuring or building of federal agencies, but now we have given deference to this administration, which, sort of rules through executive orders. I remember when folks said executive orders don't really have the power of law, but now, because of the silence from folks on Capitol Hill, you're giving an individual who has no idea what's going on. The other thing that I'll say, before I close here, is the fact that, folks on Capitol Hill actually need to do their job. Because they're not doing their job, they're creating all of this, unstable or unstableness that's currently going on. And, these Supreme Court justices, I know that they have, really important cases that they're often focusing upon, but they need to get out of D.C. and actually spend some time in Kansas City, spend some time in Pittsburgh, spend some time in Atlanta and a number of other locations across our country to actually see how these impacts are happening, both physically, mentally, and spiritually on people, because these stressors, cause additional diseases. The mental impacts also of not knowing if you're going to be able to do the job that you took an oath to do. There are a number of things that play out underneath of this scenario. So yes, I know that this has went back to the lower court and that folks will continue to litigate. But as they are doing this, this, they put these folks in limbo and in many instances have taken away the things that people love. They want to serve this country. They want to do a good job, and people just continue to slash and burn without really having a real understanding of how it's going to play out.
Larry, you've also worked on Capitol Hill, and the point that Mustafa makes there about services, about what people do, it's important, the delivery of services. They're talking about cutting thousands of people. They made these decisions, no plan at all. It was just very willy-nilly. There was no strategic decision-making involved, and that's what's so problematic for lots of people.
So this, what's happening with Doge, and obviously this particular ruling you talked about is a slash and burn as it relates to the federal workforce. You hear a lot, people talk a lot about, for instance, supporting veterans, but the VA is going to see substantial cuts. As Mustafa highlighted, there are a number of federal services that Americans take for granted and have for decades, for generations, that are going to be impacted by this decision and the possible cuts. Roland, I want to highlight two other things I think are really important. The impact this is going to have on Black folks. About 19% of the federal workforce is Black, and we make up almost 15% of the U.S. population. So we outpace in terms of the percentage of Black folks in the federal workforce. And so this is going to have substantial impact on Black people, as Mustafa highlighted when we talk about healthcare. Another thing we talk about in terms of housing, paying your mortgage or rent, et cetera. The second thing I want to highlight as it relates to this particular ruling, Roland, is it's interesting how the Supreme Court during the Biden administration felt like they had to reel the Biden administration in terms of the executive branch. But every decision that comes out the last several weeks is essentially giving more power to the executive branch, the Trump administration. So there's a contradiction in terms of what exactly the Supreme Court, what is it doing in terms of the Biden and Trump administration. But overall, this is a devastating ruling. And as I said, will have a substantial impact on the Black middle class.
Tyler, one of the things that I think we need to recognize here, and this is something that you've heard people say, this is a perfect example of what happens when you exact an agenda. And let's be perfectly clear that if a Democratic president did what Donald Trump is doing, there will be howls and screaming from right-wing media and Republicans, and probably some Democrats too. But this is also what happens when you exercise power, when you use power. And so we've heard this from other conservatives say, hey, Democrats get back in power, they can use the same thing. This should be a lesson to any Democrat who wants to be president one day. Damn it, when you get power, use it.
Exactly, Roland. I couldn't agree with you more. I think we have to play a more aggressive game. Because this, as we see here, this is about government efficiency. It's about political retaliation. And I think when we see what Trump happened, it being able to fire tens of thousands of workers without cause, it's not just a shift in the country, but it's a dangerous blow to how democratic protections have played in past times. And I just said, for future president, we understand, like, if he is taking his power to this extent, we must, take that same power you mentioned before. And as even mentioned by our panelists, this is affecting many Black and brown workers who have historically relied on civil service jobs as pathways to the middle class. And I think this could dismantle these safeguards to really be loyal to one man or one party. And I think it's definitely a blow.
Again, I just want people to understand, when you get power, you use it or you lose it. And that's what we're seeing right here. All right, folks.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.